It says I'm live. And I always like to joke about this. Live for now. You never know. You might be seeing this at a time when I'm no longer live. Anyway, but right now, at this very moment, I am. So I just welcome those who are coming in, and then we have a few people here actually in the live audience. We're blessed to have a few lay residents for about a week here at Empty Cloud. So you're welcome, those here live, to ask questions when it gets to be time for questions. And people who are coming into the chat, you're all welcome, whether you have put anything in or not. So it says Gita is here, and Karuna and John B. So, and there may be others who haven't put in anything into the chat yet. So I'm going to start. So we start out by taking refuge in the triple gem, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutam dhammam sangham namasami. So today I thought I would talk about a couple of suttas. There's some suttas in the connected discourses of the Buddha. I have a hard copy here, and I'm going to be looking at Bhante Sujato's translation as well as the one in the hard copy, the Bhante Bodhi's translation. I like to do the comparison. Both are excellent translators, but sometimes the nuances of the words, it's hard to capture the Pali. The Pali is multifaceted. Well, it's like the English words. It's in different contexts, they mean different things, and then translators have different sense of what they actually mean. And then for some people, a particular word will provoke a different kind of sense in English than another translation might provoke. So it's good to look at numerous translations, and if you have the opportunity to study the Pali itself, I would recommend that too. I'm just very much an amateur Pali student, but I'm very grateful for Bhante Sujato because he has, on Sutta Central, he has, you can get the Pali and English either side by side or kind of folded into one another, shuffled in appropriately, though. I'm not confused, but you know what I mean, line by line. So I will read through the sutta, this first one, and then I'm going to read an extract from the Majjhima Nikaya, number 9, and that's on right view. So these the sutta I'm reading at this moment is from the Magga Samyutta, that's the Connected Discourses on the Path. And so that's the Noble Eightfold Path, of course. And it's the very first sutta, and it's entitled Avijja, which means ignorance. And ignorance is the starting point of a lot of suffering. So usually the Buddha starts with the negative, and then he, like, what you shouldn't do. And then he goes to what it would be beneficial, what approach is beneficial. what you should not develop and what you should develop, what you should avoid and what you should cultivate, these kind of things. So he often starts out with what to avoid or the problem. Starts with the problem. Okay, and this is the big problem, ignorance. So this is Bhante Bodhi's translation. Ignorance. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Sawati in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, those bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, ignorance is the forerunner and the entry upon unwholesome states with shamelessness and fearlessness of wrongdoing following along. For an unwise person immersed in ignorance, wrong view springs up. For one of wrong view, wrong intention springs up. For one of wrong intention, wrong speech springs up. For one of wrong speech, wrong action springs up. For one of wrong action, wrong livelihood springs up. For one of wrong livelihood, wrong effort springs up. For one of wrong effort, wrong mindfulness springs up. For one of wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration springs up. Bhikkhus, true knowledge is the forerunner and entry upon wholesome states. With a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing following along. For a wise person who has arrived at true knowledge, right view springs up. For one of right view, right intention springs up. For one of right intention, right speech springs up. For one of right speech, right action springs up. For one of right action, right livelihood springs up. For one of right livelihood, right effort springs up. For one of right effort, right mindfulness springs up. For one of right mindfulness, right concentration springs up. So in this translation, there may be some English words that people have problems with. I know this for a fact. Some translators get really kind of like, they're kind of really adamant about avoiding certain translations. And I love Bhikkhu Bodhi. He's a wonderful scholar, wonderful monastic. And he, out of respect for Venerable Nyanamoli, retained some of the ways that there was translated, and the understanding also of what the words meant. And culturally, some words, it's just, and also the evolution of speech, even in our own language, it starts words start getting jarring to some people even. So we're not criticizing anyone. We're just trying to get a bigger picture of it so that we have a better understanding of what the Buddha is trying to say. So this one I'm going to go through a little bit more slowly, and we'll start getting a little bit more common, because it's a very short sutta. And if you're like methodically reading through the Samyutta Nikaya, you go, oh yeah, the Noble Eightfold Path, go on. But you might not pause to think about what's being said. This is like really a basic teaching and really important. So you start, we know that most of us may know that Avijja is at the top of dependent origination. It's like, it gets the whole ball. It's the origin of all our suffering. It's like what did they say? You can't determine an actual starting point. Before there was ignorance, with this round of samsara, those who have the divine eye and then can look back through myriad lifetimes can't even see a beginning before a time before there was ignorance. But there is the ending of ignorance can be discerned. This is in one of the suttas. So this is how important it is to really consider this. So I'm reading Bhante Sujata's and Sutta Central, and then I'll also mention some Pali words, and then we'll get into the other sutta, because it's very, before I finish, it's just going to get folded into the discussion. So at one time, the Buddha was staying at Sawati in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. So this is a non-gendered word, and I hope it's indicating that more than just the male, the bhikkhunis are still present. And then also, if the Buddha is addressing an audience, he may only be addressing the bhikkhus, but other people may be present. And that was common, where the senior most in a group would be addressed, either the group or an individual. So this is for everyone, even if you're not a mendicant. Venerable Sir, they replied, the Buddha said this: mendicants, ignorance precedes the attainment of useful qualities. Of unskillful qualities, with the lack of conscience and prudence following along. So Bhikkhu Bodhi has translated that. Ignorance is a forerunner in the entry upon unwholesome state. So he says unwholesome instead of unskillful. And some people would object to skillful as opposed to, because that doesn't have a ethical. I mean, I could skillfully be shooting people or something like that, a skillful thief or something. But again, wholesome is one of those words where people might cringe at that word. I don't know. Some people like moral, wholesome, something like that. But we have to, it's not about being uptight. It's about being caring, really. So any word we use, somebody's not going to like it, I'm sure. Anyway, so either skillful or unskillful or unwholesome. So these this one sentence in particular, there's a lot of differences. Ignorance precedes the attainment of unskillful qualities with the lack of conscience and prudence following along. So conscience and prudence is translated here as with shamelessness and fearlessness of wrongdoing following along. So these two terms, hiri otapa, some people may be familiar with this, is a really important, and it was translated with moral shame and moral dread, the older translation. But it doesn't have to do with shame as far as low self-esteem. It's actually more about respecting yourself and respecting others is one way of looking at it. So they're called guardians because the function of these two is to protect us from harming ourselves and others. So it's kind of like if you touch something that was really hot, you didn't realize that a surface was really hot, like a stove maybe wasn't insulated well, heater or something, and you touch it and you burn yourself. So then I have to avoid touching that. You have that fear of burning yourself again. Or maybe somebody will be saying to you, don't touch that. You'll get burnt. So if you're careless, you don't care, you don't believe that person, you're going to touch it anyway, right? And get burnt. And then, you might just keep burning yourself. So that's harm to yourself. With the hiri part is that you would not want to do anything that's below your self-dignity, that you would have this enough self-respect that you would not want to. The fear would be that you're doing something out of your character, out of your better judgment. So that's the protection there. And the ottappa is more the fear of consequences. So, that you would be harming others, or, there would be some legal ramifications, or what other people would think about you, or you'd ruin relationships with people. So this is the ottappa aspect of it. So if you don't have those, then you can't have any moral conduct that's, you won't keep your precepts. So this is why these two are really important. However they're translated, the Hiri-ottappa is very important. So the Lord Buddha here is saying that ignorance is what these two are very connected with ignorance. And then Bhattacharya further translates saying, an ignoramus sunk in ignorance gives rise to wrong view. So someone who doesn't have any sense of wrong or right, this is a wrong view. They don't want to believe there's any consequences of their behavior. So they're just kind of staunchly stuck in this wrong view. And then all this would follow. He's translating wrong intention as wrong thought. And this is, Miccha Ditti is wrong view, and Miccha Sankappo is wrong thought or wrong intention. So your thinking is wrong or your intentions are wrong, and then that gives rise to wrong speech, which makes a lot of sense. That follows after wrong speech. And they're all kind of mutually, all these path factors are mutually supportive, or mutually detrimental if you're on the miccha side, the unwholesome or unskillful or wrong side. Wrong speech gives rise to wrong action. So if you consider too the internal speech, or you're talking to yourself and you're convincing yourself, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I don't care what anyone thinks. So you have this internal speech. And also you might be maneuvering verbally to do some action, like maneuvering with others to do something that's unwholesome, convincing them to go along with you. So wrong action gives wrong to wrong livelihood. So if you're acting inappropriately, then your livelihood is likely to be inappropriate too. And then wrong livelihood gives rise to wrong effort. So your efforts will be on the unskillful side, the unwholesome side. There's 4 right efforts, so you're not. It has to do with I can get into that later, but you're not abandoning unwholesome mental states, and you're cultivating instead unwholesome mental states. So that would be the wrong. I don't know, these I think these are all kind of, there's a feedback loop that would be happening with all of this. It sounds sequential here, and in a way it is, but also there's these feedback loops where all these wrong paths factors, going down the wrong path, is kind of getting yourself in a big tangle here. And wrong effort gives rise to wrong mindfulness, and wrong mindfulness gives rise to wrong immersion. So this is how Bhante Sujato translates samadhi, Nicha samadhi. So if you can imagine, like I could have really deep mindfulness, but I would be, if I was a thief, I could be very mindfully sneaking into the house and walking very carefully and very carefully lifting something up. So that would be wrong mindfulness. And wrong concentration would be a wrong samadhi. I don't know. You could be very diluted in your calm. You could be just really checking out rather than really the mental state that's bright and conducive to wisdom. So knowledge precedes the attainment of skillful or wholesome qualities, with conscience and prudence following along. So that's the Hiri-ottappa, which I talked about. Again, the fear of it's a sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing. So I already spoke about that Hiri-ottappa. I think enough. So these are our protectors. And he's saying, a sage firm in knowledge gives rise to right view. So he said, so a person is wise, a wise person. See. So he's translated Vidasuno as a wise person. So he's just translated as sage. He's used the word sage. So this is giving rise to right view. And right view, I wanted to talk about, and this is where I'm going to jump over to this other sutta. Because right view is very fundamental to the path. It's a foundation. If you don't have right view, you're going to go in the wrong direction. It's like it's a starting point of the path, and if you're going, forward on the path, you have to go, you have to really aim, carefully, because if you're a little bit off, then you're going to go way off. So this is really the important starting point. And this is Samaditi Sutta, and I'm just going to read the first section. There's like 16 sections in this. So there's 16 ways we can understand right view in this sutta. But this is the starting point of like the foundation. Like if you're going to build a house, you're going to clear the ground, and then you're going to mark out, the parameters of the house, and then you're going to put a really firm foundation to build this house, right? Because if you get wrong at this point, the house won't last. It's going to crumble. So this is like, I think this may be why, because in the analysis of the path, the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. It's described as right view. But this section here that I'm going to read is a good. It's a mundane right view. Under the complete understanding of the Noble Eightfold Path is super mundane. So this is having to do with worldly things, and this is world transcendent is the Noble Eightfold Path. So, but if we don't have that foundation, then we're not going to be able to attain an understanding of the Noble Eightfold Path, a deep understanding of it. So I'm reading from here. Friends, a noble disciple understands the wholesome and the root of the unwholesome. The unwholesome and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome. In what way is one of right view, whose view is straight, and who has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at the true Dhamma? And what, friends, is the unwholesome? What is the root of the unwholesome? What is the wholesome? What is the root of the wholesome? Killing living beings is a wholesome. Taking what is not given is the unwholesome. Misconduct in sensual pleasures is the unwholesome. False speech is the unwholesome. Malicious speech is the unwholesome. Harsh speech is the unwholesome. Gossip is the unwholesome. Covetousness is the unwholesome. Ill will is the unwholesome. Wrong view is the unwholesome. This is called the unwholesome. So you can see this is like, if you are keeping 5 precepts, this would be breaking all of the 5 precepts. And that if you lack the Hiriyottapa, then you wouldn't have any problem with doing that. And what is the root of the unwholesome? Greed is a root of the unwholesome. Hate is a root of the unwholesome. Delusion is a root of the unwholesome. This is called the root of the unwholesome. So you have greed, hate, and delusion here. So these are the mental states that also support all this unwholesome behavior. And what is the wholesome? Abstaining from killing, abstaining from everything that we've mentioned here, abstaining from stealing. I'm just going to abbreviate it. From misconduct and sensual pleasures, abstaining from false speech, abstaining from malicious speech, abstaining from harsh speech, abstaining from gossip, and being uncovetous, non-ill will, and right view are wholesome. And the root of the wholesome is non-greed, non-hate, and non-delusion. So non-greed would be, you start out by abandoning greediness, and then that would give rise to generosity. And you abandon hate, and that would give rise to metta or loving kindness. And you abandon delusion, and that would give rise to wisdom. So when you completely abandon, when you just completely cut these out, this is a noble attainment, actually. So you start out with the mundane, which is keeping your basic ethical conduct, the precepts. And this is more detailed, has more on speech. And then also talks about right view. So understanding this wholesome and the unwholesome is a fundamental to right view. So this gives rise to all the other path factors. This is why getting yourself established on the path with this basic understanding of right view is so important, because it'll support all the other path factors. So a number of people have chimed in. So I'll just finish reading this, but I just wanted to include that. And I already mentioned how all the unwholesome or wrong path factors lead to another. So similarly, if you have right view, then it'll give rise to right thought or right intention. So like I was saying, this is so fundamental. Then you have the understanding of what's harmful, not harmful, and what to avoid. So then that goes to follow you start abandoning unwholesome thoughts or intentions. And then that would support right speech and right inner speech, as well as communicating with others will give rise to right action. And then if you're purifying, I think what it is also, if you've purified your view and your intentions and your speech, then and action, naturally right livelihood will manifest for yourself. You'll engage in right livelihood and right effort. Then the mindfulness, how you're directing your mindfulness, will be appropriate. And then also, if you have no remorse, you can be much more in the present and much more attentive to what you're doing. And then that all supports Sama Samadhi. So Samadhi is translated as immersion. Ajahn Brahm likes stillness, collectedness of mind. There's lots of different ways of translating Samadhi. So that's the support for the whole path. They're mutually supportive, but starting out with right view, which is essential. Otherwise, we go off. So I offered this for your reflection, and I'll open it up for questions. And I see there's a number of people here. I don't know if there's any questions yet. I've mentioned a few people already. Gita, Karuna, John B., Manal, Bhumika, Susi, I think, Julie, and there's people that are Shun Lai, I think. I don't know if excuse me if I'm not pronouncing your names. Leela, Spook Waters, Spook, and there's some on Atta, P on Atta. Okay, so if you have any questions, or if there's any questions in the, yes?
Yes, you sparked my curiosity when you mentioned that without right view, you can tend to get lost without direction. So I wanted to recontextualize this principle to help me better understand, or perhaps others. Say if the Buddha and one of his disciples, we'll say Ananda, for this hypothetical, say if these two were traveling in the countryside and they come upon a mountain, and their objective is to reach the apex, the top of this mountain. If Ananda were to ask the Buddha, is there only one way to reach the summit, or are there multiple paths to reach the summit? To the best of your insight, how do you think the Buddha would respond to this question?
Well, probably, I don't know if I would have to know the mountain, because there may actually only be one way to get up to the top, because sometimes that's the case, and sometimes there's other ways to get up on. But if you're walking that path and your attitude is off, then you're going to get lost. You're going to get, I mean, like if I'm overcome with greed and I'm climbing the mountain and there's a village on the side, and I go off and I go into the village and I never make it to the top of the mountain because I'm just carousing and, getting into mischief or whatever. I'm just giving, so, what's most important is the sense of that we can distinguish between what's harmful and what's non-harmful to begin with. I mean, we're not like I don't want to mention names, but some furry animals, like cats, they have no sense of shame or that they're harming. And even if they're well fed, they'll go out and they'll kill rodents. And so, no matter how much you scold or whatever, the cat is not going to stop doing it unless you just, don't ever let it outside. And if there's any flies or anything in the house, they'll be killing them too, So this is just animal instinct, but as human beings, we can discern, oh, this is harmful, and we become more sensitive too. I mean, at least we shouldn't be killing one another. And then there's many people can make that kind of distinction, that's something important, or they dehumanize certain people, classes of people. And we all know about this. It's just terrible. So that's an extreme of wrong view where we think that harming other living beings is okay. So we're never going to make it. Or if we're just totally indulging in sense pleasures and not caring how it's impacting ourselves or others, then we'll never make it to the top of the mountain either. Like I'm saying, you go to the pub on the way. You won't make it to the top. Somehow I got.
I was just going to say, the people online probably can't hear the question, so you may need to repeat.
I see. Yeah, so he was asking, somebody was asking about the Buddha was with Ananda, and he would ask, is there more than one path up the mountain? There probably is, but there may be the most expedient path. And but what I was trying to say, in some cases, some mountains, there may be the only one safe way to go. There may be other ways to go, but they might not be safe. There might be fraught with danger, and maybe some reckless people would want to go that way. And some people might actually make it to the top, but most people don't. Or they get vastly delayed or something. So, but also, if you're walking to the mountain and you get distracted by the pub or the whatever, I don't know. Yeah. Then you'll never make it up the mountain. So did you have a question?
I did. I was going to ask you about this translation. intention versus thought, right? I mean, the word is sankalpa, right? It seems like that word has some inherent understanding or meaning of wishes. To me, like whenever I see sankalpa, I can't help think that there's some wish involved in that word. But when it's translated as thought, I'm not so sure thought is necessarily involved with wishing. Like you can think other things other than what you want or what your wish might be. I would love to hear what you think on that. And you might have
Sankalpa.
to repeat that question for those people.
Yeah. Someone here was asking the difference of understanding of the word for Sankappa, which is a second path factor, is, Bhante Sujata translates it as thought, and that's also older. What I first heard, and then I heard intention later, and the intention was making more sense to me. And the Sankappa, here, I'll cheat. We have Samma Sankappa, and they just translate it as right intention. Sometimes you can get more. Yeah, I'd have to look in a dictionary that has breaking the word down. Sankappa. I probably looked at it before, but I can't remember offhand. It's a good. Intention seems to make a lot more sense because it's really how you're directing your mind. A thought can just be kind of, although thoughts, you may formulate thoughts into what you may want to be speaking or doing, or but intention is like an intention to do something. Like I see the clock and I'm intending to pick it up. Or I could just be thinking about clocks in general or something like that. So intention is more it's more active, and it's more connected with karma, with our actions. And then if I have the intention to harm somebody, if I have a knife and I'm intending to harm somebody, and then I actually cut somebody with a knife, then that might be murder. But if I'm a surgeon and I have a knife and I'm cutting someone, I might be saving their life. So the intention is to do, and the surgeon may be intending to save the life, but they are not able to, or they accidentally do something that, it's unexpected because the anatomy is different than it's abnormal or something like that, and they do something that causes the person to die. But that wasn't their intention. They were trying to save the life. So intention is a much stronger comically. So I like the translation right intention. And I don't know if that's answering your question. I can't dive into the Pali the way I'd like to. I'll have to look at a different dictionary than is online here. But when you start looking at the parts of speech, san usually is like with or connected. Kappa, somebody maybe online might be able to look it up if they're quick at those kind of things. But that's a good question. We could look into that.
I know the Sanskrit sankalpa, and that's why I have this leaning towards intention also, because the Sanskrit sankalpa is clearly about wishing. It's you make a wish like a birthday, and that's sankalpa.
Oh, okay. So the Sankalpa is the Sanskrit, excuse me, and there's a definite meaning of wishing to do something. So that would be intending, or that's directing your mind and your actions. So I may have also the intention to abandon unwholesome mental states. I have this strong intention. And thoughts can just be a random thing. So it'd be interesting to see why Bhante Sujata chose thought. He probably has his reasons. Because what you think about, you sometimes will do, but intention is stronger, it's more volitional. So I don't see any questions. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see any questions online. I'm not sure how to get rid of this one. So was there more questions in the...
I have another one.
You have another one? Yes.
I'm interested in the word shame. You said moral shame, one of the translations. And I know that, like, today's psychological circles, that's a no-no. We're always taught not to feel shameful. But I'm wondering whether you would agree with that, because it seems like there is some value in feeling really bad when we do something and we harm someone. Like, it seems like there would be some real value in having really bad feelings about something I did in the past that would make me remember not to do it in the future. Some value in that, even though it's a bad feeling and it's uncomfortable. Like, I appreciate that there may be some value to it.
Yeah. So there's a mention about the shame. So there's a shamelessness and shame is in, I think that's Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. And then there's fear of wrongdoing. No, this is actually Bhante Sujato, I think. Well, whoever said it. There is a idea of shame. And that's what I was saying. It was a guardian. There's these two Hiriotapa, however they're translated, are considered guardians. And then there's a comment about, even though we're feeling bad, when we think about, we're having remorse basically about some action that we had done that we regret later. And then so there's a sense of shame, and that may prevent us from doing something in the future. That's just kind of like the touching the hot stove or something like that. There's like this, burns, that hurts. And so it's different than a kind of toxic shame that they talk about. This is what he's bringing up too in psychotherapy. Shame is kind of a bad word, and maybe a number of people have gone and tried to. It's a different use of the word, like feeling ashamed of yourself, thinking that you're damaged, thinking that you're unworthy, thinking, something happened in my life, either to me or I did something. Maybe I committed a crime, or somebody committed a sexual crime towards me. And then there's a lot of people that they've gone through some kind of trauma. Either they've done something terrible or something terrible happened to them. And then they're convinced there's this feeling of shame. I'm unworthy, I'm dirty, I'm no good, I'm damaged. And that's what they're calling shame. But it's like a toxic shame. But this is not what they're talking about, what the Lord Buddha is talking about, it's more like, I know I did something that was not right. And then I feel regret for that I can see the harm it caused the other person and myself. But then I'm making a decision not to do that again. And even though you can't undo what was done, I can make a resolve. I can't undo what was done, what I did, but I'm making a resolve not to do it again. And I've told this story before, but when I was still a layperson and I was married, I was renting an apartment, and then there was a mouse that was in this electrical stove. So my husband and I decided we'd get one of those snap traps. And so I put it in the stove, the electrical stove, under the, you can just slip it underneath where the burners are. And then the next morning, I found the mouse. And I felt so terrible to see this poor little mouse that had been, crushed by they're so tiny, and then the wire just crushed it. And so I felt so terrible, just so bad. And I said, I'm never going to do this again. And that's the kind of thing, like you realize, oh, that was such a mistake to do that. And then I did figure out, they found out about live traps. You can live trap mice, but it's just like that kind of thing where your heart is just going, no, that's not right. I really sad that I did that. and so that's going to prevent me from doing, if I have that kind of theory, if we just start learning the Pali and forget about the English translations, I don't know. But we understand what the concept is. It's a preventative emotion. It's wholesome regret. Maybe another way of saying it's a healthy regret. And but we may not even have done anything too. Like it may be that I see something that looks really appealing to me, and then there's nobody around, and I have this temptation to take it. And then I see this intention in my mind, and I'm going, oh, that's a bad idea. I shouldn't do that. And then that might have a little bit of a shame that I even thought that. There's this impulse to what's around. But that out of respect for myself and concern for others, I don't do it. But the fact that I was thinking about doing it is like, and that's kind of like the hot stove again. I was like, ouch. So that protects me, or I've picked it up. Oh dear, how bad idea. This isn't mine. That would be really bad karma. So that's a kind of, shame's kind of it's just like English words starts getting different meanings just over time and used particular ways. And so people, maybe psychotherapists, see this phenomena in people where people are feeling ashamed, maybe, or feeling, what kind of word can we use for it, where they're feeling really bad about themselves because of a past behavior or something. So somebody has written here, let's see if I can click on that, show it. Related to shame, do you think external shame from others to try to control you is helpful? I have internal shame, and I think we all do, to keep us from doing it again. So I think our parents may do this kind of a thing. And so there's two approaches if you're a parent. One is to like really kind of get the fear of some kind of horrible consequences in the child, or well, that's more than two. But there's punishment and there's reward, kind of. There's a fear of punishment, but part of that is trying to instill that this is a really terrible behavior, and then if you're doing it, so you're a terrible person, something like that. But then you could also instill something more like people that care about other people wouldn't do that kind of a thing. Something. So you might have a more positive way of doing it. So I don't know that really shaming, that kind of shaming, is helpful. It may be if the child has done something and then you really tell them, like, this is really a bad idea. This is really, whatever it is. I don't know that corporal punishment doesn't work. Psychological abuse is not, you could get into psychological abuse. And that may be where the shame in this psychology comes in, where could be the either society or, parent or teacher or something got this idea in a person's mind about they're a shameful person. The behavior is not right. The behavior is harmful. The behavior is something to avoid. And then if we go ahead and engage in it, then we should make amends. We should be regretful. But yeah, so externally shaming someone, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily helpful myself. More just looking at consequences, cause and effect. The Lord Buddha talks about cause and effect. And I think that's maybe a better approach, because having an internal sense of shame, if it's only that I would feel shame if I did something that was breaking my basic ethical conduct, code of conduct. Yeah, again, it's that word. This could throw out of the English language, maybe. I don't know. Use something different. And see, and then we probably should stop. It's about 9, so we'll have to stop soon. Let's see. It says, I think intentional is good. I don't do that. Okay, my intention. So setting a good intention. So I won't do that. Yeah. But understanding, whoops, where did it go? Okay. But understanding what really works best is not there. That's why understanding view must come first. Cause, effect, yes. Yeah, so another translation of sammaditthi is right understanding. So view, understanding, yeah, both of them are good. How you perceive things, how you see things, or how you understand things, it's probably all encompassed in ditthi. But ditthi actually does have come from ditta, which is a past participle of what seeing in Pali. So it's similar to English where we have a view, but it's more a framework. A view is kind of a framework that we work from. So that's the foundation. So thank you all for your kind attention, and we should end for now. So have a wonderful day.